I think endpoint security, is ripe for a complete and total reinvention. Companies, if you ask anybody how much they've spent in the last decade on endpoint security, namely antivirus, because that has been the predominant endpoint security for a decade plus, they'll tell you in some cases tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. Ask those same companies if they feel that their security posture is any better today on the endpoint than it was 10 years ago. The answer is no. And so there's no question that the smartest companies on the planet are absolutely taking a dramatically different approach to endpoint security. And they will not end this year with the same endpoint security strategies as they had 3 months ago or 6 months ago. So to me, those are two of the big areas.
Great, Peter.
Yeah, I think the reason I'm wearing a suit and tie. I never wear a suit and tie except at weddings and funerals and going to see the CIA. That's when I also wear a suit and a tie. So I got back from Langley today, or actually McLean, Virginia today, and funny enough, I think the CIA and all the money we're spending on intelligence, that's great, but on security, they still have the same problems that corporate America does. They still have an endpoint issue. They still have attacks, or they still worry about attacks. And I think, to be my usual controversial self, I think the problem is we got a big wake-up call with Google, and that, guess what? Current solutions like antivirus clearly don't work. Everybody in this conference knows that, but now the guys that are in the C-level executive offices are starting to wake up to the reality of, oh, what do you mean our Symantec isn't getting it done? Even though they're spending, $7 to $8 billion a year on AV, for example, that's now bound to also the crap that doesn't work either. It's a frustrating thing. Now you combine that, Maria was talking earlier how the early 2000s were the boom times in a way for startups. The latest VentureWire data states point blank that in 2009, the venture capital levels of investment in security were half of that level as 2005. So we've got a really interesting dynamic going on. We've got, clearly we're getting owned or getting our ass kicked all over the place. We've got a depletion to literally a 50% or less funding level currently, and yet, where is this void going to get filled? And I was here last year as the keynote speaker, and I said point blank, it's a great time to start a security startup. As Maria said, and I totally agree with Maria, in a recession, you've seen some of the strongest companies in the world come out, Microsoft, Oracle, et cetera. Those were recessionary 80s companies that came out and dominated. So I think from that point of view, security now, if you can get it going, and the cost to get a security startup is less if you can rely on cheaper ways of getting development done, et cetera, it's a fantastic time to help solve this problem, or help solve this problem, because clearly there's still a need.
We are going to take audience questions and whatnot. There is a microphone somewhere. So while we're waiting for the mic, anybody else on the panel want to disagree or add to what we've just been discussing?
I would just note that I think security is a great space, and it's going to continue to grow. I mean, the world is just increasingly digital. The economy is almost entirely reliant on a digital infrastructure, and that's just going to increase. Like there's no going backwards, right? Increasingly, appliances, everything is digitized. Privacy is going to remain a huge concern. So I think it's a great space to be in. In terms of as an entrepreneur looking out at a company that you might want to start, I wouldn't necessarily focus on targeting a growing sector of the market. I would focus on what you care about and what you're good at. Right, and if you're passionate about your startup, that's the surest way to make sure that you're going to win. And don't try to predict the market too much, except to, obviously, it may not be the best thing to go into a startup related to creating horse and buggies, right? Like certain things are certainly dying and out of vogue. But in general, this is a huge growing space. And if you're passionate about what you do and you're good at it, go for it.
So Andrew, you had a question for Peter?
Hello. You were saying that now is a good time to start a company and to get venture capital. 5, 10, 15 years ago, it was mostly, correct me if I'm wrong, people that were starting companies out of their garages, first companies that they've ever done, and they're going for it. Are you seeing a lot of that still, or is it mostly people that have been through this venture process, had a company, sold it, started another one, did the process, sold it, and then is going for like a second, third, or fourth round as a new company?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys want to jump in. It's not a me question.
Yeah, I think IT security has definitely been one of those spaces where you have serial people that, they did one startup in security, they did another startup in security, and they kind of know the space, and they know the players, and they know the lingo. I've actually been somewhat disappointed that I haven't seen as many new, younger entrepreneurs with really innovative, security ideas. And I think, the consumer venue is ripe for innovation, and I haven't seen as much of that. But I don't think as far as getting funded, I don't think it really matters. I think if somebody has a really strong idea, and I think if they can show some, customer demand and pull and an interesting, piece of technology for a market, look, I think right now, I think it's a great time to start a security startup. I think the only flip side of it is I think that it's harder today to get something started in security because I think there's a little bit of apprehension from investors on, can you build something big? I think for a long time you saw, as soon as something had a spot in the market and showed innovation and had like half a dozen customers, it would get picked up for 100, 150 million, $200 million by, Cisco or CA or, Checkpoint or other. You don't see those technology tuck-ins today at those type of multiples. I think technology tuck-ins is a commodity today, and especially there's an overabundance of supply on the technology side to those corporate buyers. So I think you have to be prepared for a really long-term journey of building a real company. And building a real company means, 7 years and getting that to, $50, $100 million in, bookings and revenue and being prepared to go long. And I think that's where, and the buyers, it's tough, Symantec, McAfee, Cisco, they own the channel, and you better be willing to go build a big enough piece of business to go compete there.
So is that the stage of companies you invest in? People that can show you they have traction, they paint the billion-dollar market for you? Or are you going for earlier stage that are like, look, we know we can get into a, $100 million market, or even smaller, but we know there's potentially breaking out? So what kind of things are you looking at that you're investing in?
I'll answer quickly. I think it's all over the map. I think that we'll do a seed investment for something that you think could have potential to, if you demonstrate, some science or some technology or some market adoption. But generally, for us, if we do not think a company can be, a $250, $500 million market cap opportunity, either by acquisition or IPO, it's a really tough thing for saying we should make an initial investment, whether it's a seed or a Series A.
Just to add on to that, I think the answer is it does depend. It really depends on what the idea is. It depends on how big we think the company can be. When we were working early on with the founders of Veracode, there was no customers. Right? There was nothing but some interesting technology that still needed a lot of work and a new business model, in order to become the company that it is today. But we happily embraced that because we believed that it was a revolutionary technology that was going to change the way people did a lot of things relative to code assurance. And we helped, fill in, the blanks that those folks didn't have. So, and then in other situations, we need to see more proof. So it really does depend.
Yeah, let's work Vishy in here. It was interesting. Goldman Sachs does their annual survey, and a couple of years ago there was this great quote that said, "I spend more time managing my vendors than I do my solutions." And I think that really started a pivot where people had way too many security vendors, and there was a push to make security a feature of common infrastructure. The biggest security companies right now are IBM, Cisco, Oracle, CA. They're infrastructure first, and they're baking security or acquiring security companies in. So as a counterpoint perhaps, or maybe a different investment strategy, those tuck-ins might make more sense. So from an infrastructure perspective, how are you viewing things?
So I was actually just about to add that, over time as, very well, great descriptions of the changing security investment climate. The fact of the matter is that there's just more and more of an installed base in technology, and any new sort of security solution, not just security, anything else for that matter, needs to come in and justify how it fits into the existing picture. Like you can't just come and assume a blank slate as you might have in the past. So it's definitely more challenging, and possibly it points towards smaller businesses. Just from that sort of macro picture. But from an infrastructure point of view, we continue to look at so we just invested in a cloud endpoint management company called Viewfinity, and they don't explicitly have a security play, but they are going after the mid-market and the SMB sector, and what they are doing is they're basically partnering with a whole bunch of explicitly security vendors to offer a platform, something that sort of fits together to their customers. So we really are seeing security as a form of infrastructure management. And, as new infrastructures come out, cloud, software as a service,